America and holds a patent for predictive algorithms, and of course loves coffee. He's in Seattle, right? And there's a couple of very interesting things. Let me pick the one rather here. Former GM Microsoft for startups, founding team Microsoft first VC fund. Now it's in the 12th or 13th edition. And I think you co-led the Cloudflare Series C for Microsoft.
Yeah.
And then former GM Global OEM Channels and Service Products. Overall, he's an overachiever, but very humble. And talk.
Thank you.
But he just gets shit done and likes to work with people who are easy to go with and don't make life complicated. That's my personal additions.
Thank you.
I just want to add one quick note about Jim too, and our interaction, if I may. Jim, in my view, is one of the sharpest technology executives I've had the pleasure of working with. He knows so much about the space. His knowledge about it is acute, deep. He's just a really terrific person to get a great view of what's happening in the technology ecosystem, what's happening to the technologies, how it's going to rapidly change business practices and so on. He's got a really terrific, sophisticated view of it. I really enjoyed the interaction with him. Just to say that out in public, Jim. Thank you, Sean. And one quick thing that I wanted to highlight before I hand it over to Jim is I wanted to showcase one of our companies, right? Darwin AI was a company that was started, co-founded by one of the alums from the firm. He's a member of Marvin's Angels. His name is Arif Virani. There's a bunch of other co-founders as well. Alex Wong, who's the chief scientist and so on, who does some terrific work on AI. He's a professor of computer science in Waterloo in Canada. So a number of us actually invested with Darwin AI. We actually introduced them to our partner, Wharton Angels. They got funding from there as well. And then since we had the connection with 5G and with Jim, we introduced Darwin AI to Jim. Jim actually talked to them and invited them to come and join one of the cohorts, which they did. And he helped them further get into other spaces with Microsoft and a bunch of other things like that. Similar situation accrued with another alum who started a drone company called Drissit. This is Alex. Alex also went through us, has some investment from us, and went into 5G as well. So we've had a really nice relationship where we've used Jim and the 5G lab to great mutual benefit. So I'll just add that.
Thank you, Sean, for the kind words. Appreciate it.
And maybe one last philosophy point. I think Jim really does not like when large companies have no clue on how to innovate, and not only have no clue about how to innovate, but do everything that is not going to work, even though they have a partnership.
Yeah. Thank you. Wow, those are big.
So in a good way, but he pushes even large companies actually to move, right?
Yeah. Thank you both for that. My name is Jim Brisimitzis. I'm the founder of the 5G Lab. I started my career at a company called Nortel Networks many years ago, and then I joined a big ERP company called PeopleSoft. There was a hostile acquisition from Oracle, and I was at Oracle for about 3 months before I got a recruiting call from Microsoft. I was at Microsoft for many years, as you've heard, and I spun out of that in 2018. I really enjoyed doing developer relations work. I was looking for platform opportunities that were relatively nascent. When I started looking at what 5G was just consumer-wise, I knew there was more to the story of what 5G is. And as I dug into it, I started realizing that, in fact, there was much more of the story. And it's an inflection point for this industry that I felt so strongly about that, we built the lab and the program and the partnerships to get after it. So a little bit about the lab. We started in earnest in 2019. We launched our first of now 8 batches in May of 2020. So just when the world was locking down in COVID, we went forward with our first batch. Since then, we've had over 118 startups of all stages come through the program. They have now raised close to $2.2 billion worth of venture capital. A majority of that is pre-program funding, pre-program meaning the startups that we've engaged, and then we measure or track post-program funding. Our post-program funding is actually now over $800 million. We're approaching the $1 billion mark funding. Since we've launched the program itself, we've only had 4 teams cease operations. That's pretty good. If you think about the ratios of 118 teams, 6 of them have been acquired and others continue raising capital. Being at Microsoft for almost 14 years, it's very partner-led. Microsoft is a platform, whether it's Windows, Office, Xbox, now Azure. It's a huge platform company. And so a lot of what Microsoft built its fortunes and its reach around was through partnerships. And so we took the same playbook. We have 17 pretty amazing partners that we work with. These are partners that span big tech platforms, global SIs, carriers. We have several of them. And then what I call incumbent technology partners that include the Ericssons, Nokias, Spirents, and Amdocs. These are big platform companies that are incumbent into the telecommunications industry as well. We're very much focused on doing. We're not a startup accelerator program and incubator, as we focus on working and scouting with a number of really strong teams. The purpose there is to get those teams exposed to our partners and then drive engagements. Since the launch of our program, we've had well over 1,600 different engagements. And we're very much focused on enterprise. Despite what you might see or read or hear about in the context of 5G, I can assure you your life has not changed because of 5G. There is not much of a consumer uplift. There is a significant opportunity in the enterprise. 3GPP is an international standards body where the world converges and talks about what future standards for wireless capabilities are going to be. And back in early 19, there was really 3 things that were happening that if the carriers really embraced it, it could be transformative to them. Remember, this is coming from a context where carriers were really done and over being quote unquote a dumb pipe. They wanted to move more and more up the stack. So prior to where we are with today's standards in 5G, many of the carriers essentially bought and operated monolithic systems, right? They would buy any flavor of Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei, whoever the vendors were. And these were rather closed systems, monolithic in nature. And they were purpose-built, right? They were meant to connect digital subscribers, and they're fully integrated. In the move to 5G, there was very much an adoption of more cloud-native architectures. And that is phenomenal for the carriers. It unlocks them from some of these monolithic capabilities, but it puts them squarely in the same realm of the hyperscalers from the context of being cloud-native. This is a really tremendous opportunity for the carriers to be differentiated. They can be a platform for applications. The other big area that I got really excited about is there is now a building momentum in a market around what's called private enterprise or private 5G networking. These big monolithic complex systems have been simplified with air quotes. There's still a lot of complexity in them, but they've now become within reach where enterprises are exploring the adoption of and deployment of cellular-based wireless networks. It's going to solve a pretty big problem for them, which is connectivity in remote areas, or if they need dependable wireless connectivity inside manufacturing facilities or hospitals or such. Cellular is becoming a lot more interesting to the enterprise. Here in the United States, the FCC, which governs spectrum auctions, actually carved out what's called CBRS and made it available for enterprises to start adopting both as priority access licenses or generally available access licenses as well. So that started to unlock the early days of what we're seeing as private 5G, and it's starting to generate some really great momentum. What was really needed to bring all of this opportunity together was to expose pretty vibrant app ecosystem, and that's what the lab was designed and born to do, was to coalesce and bring that ecosystem together, which includes innovative startups, global tech platforms, GSIs, carriers, incumbents, and enterprises. And that's essentially what we focus on. We're a multi-stage startup program. We've had companies that have raised $500,000 in capital to companies like Headspin, that was part of our last batch. It's raised over $115 million. Most accelerators tend to really focus on that seed stage. Most always, you're never going to see many Series A, B, or C. we're an entirely virtual program. While we're here in nice, wet Seattle, we do see teams from all over the world. We have teams from Australia, India, we have teams from all across North America, and now we have teams in Europe and Tel Aviv as well. So we source all of our teams virtual. And as I mentioned earlier, our goal was not to be an accelerator. Our goal is also not to become what I like to call a startup petting zoo, which is a great place for cool startups, but for enterprise engagements that we drive, it's just cool tech. We're really focused on engagement between startups and our partners and try to align those incentives and those priorities that we drive forward with outcomes and engagements. The other area that we try to push as well is when you're a big, large enterprise like a Microsoft, or you're a big incumbent CSP like an AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, it's very hard to look past that comfort area. We're very big on experimenting. There's a project that I'll share with you in just a little bit that is evidence of that experimentation. Software is fundamentally changing the rules of every industry. It's very possible that CSPs, their reach and their influence in market could diminish. There is a slowdown in spending on 5G from carriers. They're not making as much money in their 5G capital expenditures. The three big carriers here in the United States hold more debt than Microsoft, Amazon, and Google combined. And that's scary when you think about what Microsoft, Amazon, and Google do in terms of serving the market and their various products versus what the three carriers do here. So we created a lab environment where we can experiment on new business models, new implementations of technologies, connect the interesting stuff that are happening between our startups and our partners, again, in the spirit of driving outcomes. Since we launched our program, as I mentioned earlier, we've had 118 various teams across 8 batches. Next week, selecting our 9th batch. That will start on March 4th. We run 2 batches a year. This next batch will be a bit smaller. As I mentioned, these teams are sourced from all around the world. Our sourcing is really unique in that we will source deals directly through venture firms. We get a lot of founder-to-founder referrals, which are high-quality referrals for us, and we also get a lot of referrals from our partners. Okay, as I mentioned, we're backed by 17 partners from around the world. These are partners that sponsor the program. We are funded entirely by sponsorship dollars through our various partners, but they come to us because we have tons of experience in what we do, and so they're investing their time and their dollars into the program because this is the place where they see a lot of where the market's going to start to make more strides. From the standpoint of how we operate the program, I pulled this slide because I really wanted to land the point of we're really focused on driving outcomes. The showcased outcomes you see here in the slide are just an example of engagements that have happened between both our startups and our partners, all in the spirit of serving the enterprise base globally. We're very focused on aligning incentives. We're very focused on trying to find POVs. In fact, past conversations with Robert and Shaman. In fact, we actually even signed an MOU between us and Marvin's Angels, where you all see great POV opportunities. We'd love to bring startups and their solution sets into that. We're very focused on our ROI as well, right? We don't want to waste anyone's time. We want every engagement to matter. We're in the process now with 118 teams. We've effectively created a small catalog of solutions, whether those are solutions in edge computing, IoT, big data, drones, medical. It doesn't matter what those solutions are. We've also even created our own small platforms, leveraging some of the companies we've had the privilege to work with. None of this would be at all possible without the fantastic team that we have.